Snow is the climate coordinator for the district, and Camica is a public school educator with over 20 years experience working with families. She's a mother, a wife, and a mental health provider. And together they'll describe their perspectives from the field. And they both work very hard for the entire school district. So Kate and Camica, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you. And my followers might probably recognize Camica. She's been a guest several times and co-hosts for me periodically. Mm-hmm. So I thought it'd be helpful. Why don't we start with you, Camica, to describe to people like what you do in this field and sort of background for your JEDI perspective.
I am a school counselor by training, and 9 years in the field providing support in the areas of academic, college and career, and personal social for students and families, staff. And that this year, or the last 4 years, has looked like serving specific populations of youth in foster care and youth who are in a homeless situation. And though I can't speak about specific families, their circumstances, I am able to give a broad perspective on, what it looks like in the Davis School for our district. So that's what I'm coming to the table with: school counseling experience of 9 years.
Thank you so much. How about you, Kate?
So I've been in this work for the school district as the school climate coordinator, district climate coordinator for about 14 years. And for those not familiar with that position, it's not a standard position for school districts. But 20 years ago, the school board decided that it was important to monitor for sites, for schools, to pay attention to what their climate was and to have committees that oversee and keep an eye on and follow the data. And so this position was created and has been held by a number of people, but that's the primary part of my work, is to help schools understand their own climate. As a result of that, then I work with many different folks, and I work both for student climate and staff climate to ensure that our spaces are conducive to learning for all, to growing for all, to being who we are fully in these spaces.
So you're talking about social climate and climate of acceptance, belonging, or finding where people are feeling excluded and creating opportunities for inclusion.
Right. So sometimes we talk about climate being like the measure of the culture. If the climate's not good, you can tell that it's a symptom that the culture's not good and that the system is not good. And so we measure that climate by taking surveys. We do student, staff, and family surveys. And we look at that data quantitatively, but we also do lots of qualitative walkthroughs, conversations. Camica and I have had many, many conversations, about the climate in a particular room or a particular site, or, you and I have had some of those too, about why does this space feel different to some people? Why does it feel welcoming to some and not to others? And what can we do to change that broadly, systemically, but also in the very particular spaces?
Thank you. So I have known Camica longer. She was the counselor for my daughter when my daughter was in 7th grade, and helped create space for my daughter to feel included. I'm curious, Camica, just because I've been able to notice so many of the things that you have brought to schools, and like advising Black student unions, maybe Black staff unions, and just so many ways, bringing Kwanzaa principles to a particular campus that educated so many people who didn't know anything about it, and learning the principles. And there's just so many things you've done. So I think it would be nice if you could share what it takes to help create, like Kate just used the word systemic changes to bring things into a school culture, to become new traditions involving student leadership. So I was just curious because I've seen your commitment and I know how consistent you are, but can you just let folks know just what it takes and what keeps you going for it?
I will start by saying that role that I volunteer for as advisor, happens during lunchtime, before school, after school. It's off of it's not contract time. The district doesn't pay me for that work, and so the schools that I have been allowed to do work with those specific student populations have allowed me to do so because the leadership wasn't afraid to say yes. The admin wasn't afraid to support students where they are. And we, as a district wide, recognize that students are they're most impacted by our decisions. And so when you said student led, that's exactly how I became involved. It started with students wanting a space, students wanting a voice, students wanting protected time together in an affinity type group. And so as soon as students started expressing their interest, and then how it works in a public school district is, you have the advisor as a staff member to make sure the kids are safe and being respectful, and all of the programs lead to some, common agreed upon mission, vision, and values. And so I got chosen to be a co-advisor. And that work has been rewarding to get to know students in a different space, not just their academic selves, not just their social selves, not just their future selves, because counselors focused on the future and preparing for the future, but just meeting them in the day-to-day, in the present moment of what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and what they're doing. And then me, as the one of the adults in the room, gets to witness their experience and honor their voice and their choice and their decisions and their experiences, which only opens the door for more trust and more deepening of relationships. And so since I've been in the district since 2016, have been able to continue that collateral work with Black student unions. And we are a tiny population in Davis. And so the BSUs look very diverse, but we always focus on Black history, always focus on Black concerns in the Black community with our allies. So the work has started with student interest, and then what they want to do, and then my support, and then I get to bring myself, I get to bring my experiences because I was raised in a proud Black family, and I want to shout out my ancestor, my father, Willie Lewis Edwards, who raised us girls with Kwanzaa principles, Black history. We celebrated Juneteenth. They both went to HBCUs, so I get to express that part of myself in the BSUs, safely, comfortably, and freely. So it's been a wonderful, bi-directional, mutual gift to be able to support students. And then at the end of the year, we have a Black graduation celebration. I have loved seeing the culmination of their work being supported in the school systems, not just as a student, but as a whole person, and them striving for their goals with their tribe. And I feel very grateful to be part of their village.
Thank you. There's nice images running through my head as you described that.
Yeah.
So Kate, what do you want to add from your perspective, from your the commitment it takes to go against the kind of mainstream institutionalized patterns that we know focus on the mainstream white population in general. Despite everyone's best intentions, the patterns are still very, very strong. And you've been working for a lot of years finding ways to kind of dismantle that exclusion and bring in more and more people. Just can you describe some of that for you?
Sure. I think it's fair to say it's maybe helpful to say that, well, first of all, just the bidirectional aspect, Camica, I think works for, is a really important piece of persisting in this work. And I can say more about that later. But I also feel like part of what helps me be able to do this work is, although my first years out of college were teaching, I spent a lot of years after that doing community organizing and being in places where small groups of people were trying to make changes to big systems, whether it was fighting the mayor of Boston, or I was a long time in Boston, but or a community fighting for its resources, or young people setting up a business in a neighborhood. So I think I came to this work thinking about just taking a bunch of us to do something. That organizing is sort of the fundamental value, organizing principle is the driving way of doing things. And I had to learn in a system like this, where there's a very, very set way of making change. The structures are in place, and there are some rules and regulations about how one, uses Robert's Rules of Order and votes in policies or it takes away policies. And so taking the organizing piece and bringing it into a really structured system took some learning, and I had some amazing mentoring from Mel Lewis, who brought me into this work. And and then from there, as I began to just listen, really, I could start to hear themes and then began to be able to find communities, because that's the other thing about a school system is you've got all these separate schools, you've got all these separate grade levels, you've got all these people who are separated from each other. And if you're going to change the whole thing, you've got to pull people together. And so, when Camica spoke about creating a space, even at a school, you had, kids isolated in classrooms and different corners of campuses. And so listening to the common threads and then asking people if they'd be willing to come together with each other has then helped. Then I, as a person who, literally I'm seated in the district office when I'm in my office, which isn't all the time, but I can then help bring that message and or make a space here, find the way to open a door so that those voices can come, make decisions, make changes. So that's a way to say it. One thing that helps is when it works. And so there's some energy, right? People feel like there's been a success and maybe there'll be more. But part of what I'm looking right at the poster that has driven me for a very long time, which is the quote attributed to one activist, but to a group of activists in New Zealand, Maori activists, about, if you've come to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, let us work together. I think I came into this work thinking I was doing something for other people. And along the way, learned that if I was going to stay, and where the just deep joy and effectiveness is because it's bidirectional, it's for all of us. And boy, we who have benefited from skating along in a culture that was designed for our patterns, right? I would say white, middle-class Protestant patterns. I would start there. Have no idea what we've been denied. And although there has been privilege and power and all sorts of access, there have been great things we've been denied. And I have felt so lucky to get to reclaim some of those human parts of myself and human relationships that if we don't question this status quo, we'll never get to.
Thank you for bringing that in. That's huge. a huge gap.
Yeah.
Missing for everyone.
Well, I like how you framed it as it's the I'll say majority and minority, but
Okay.
I no longer think us non-white people are in the minority. We're like a numbers thing, but I've tried to stop
Right.
using it. I don't want to minoritize us and continue to marginalize us. But I think what you said about we miss out too, we as white people miss out too, on what we don't make space for, what we don't allow room for, the perspectives that don't have seats at the table. It's a loss for you too, not just for us. And so I appreciate that perspective because I think, not I raised in public schools in America, thinking about all the things that I wasn't taught growing up outside in the public schools, but in the home for sure. And now that I'm an adult and responsible for my own learning and development and personal growth, there's so much in activism and organizing and contributions and STEM fields and education and writing. There's just so much that I didn't know. And it was lost to me and lost to others that don't look like me. And so I appreciate Kate recognizing that it's not just a unilateral loss, it's bi-directional loss. And so we're fighting to not just for crumbs, but fighting for to be fully seen and fully humanized with our histories and in our present moment living so that we can create a more equitable future for our young people. Great point, Kate.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. And
We've
again,
we've compromised our integrity and our humanity. And those are huge losses.
Yes.
When you're told that it's okay for things to be unfair, that is a massive confusion we lay on young people, and then we perpetuate it.
Yep.
Sorry, I interrupted you, but yeah.
Oh no, thank you. I want to quadruple reinforce what a loss when I am not fully human towards other people. I'm not fully human.
Yes.
And I hurt, and sometimes we don't even know what's missing until we get a sense of it through relationship building with people we were taught to fear or doubt or not trust. And then when we come into relationship, there's just a whole new brilliance and creativity and stimulation and other thoughts that expand our consciousness for everyone. It's just like you said, joyful, and brings us into fuller integrity, which is just a happier, not just better, but a happier way to live. I am noticing, I'll ask the next question, but we're going to take a break while you contemplate this question. And I just think it's for you two to share, like Camica offered this title, JEDI Perspectives from the Field. So when we come back, we're just going to take almost a 5-minute break. And our engineer Rebel is going to play a song for us, and then we'll come back and hear your responses to that question.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on moving proudly. Keep on moving proudly. Keep on moving proudly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Can you keep on singing loudly? Keep on singing loudly. Keep on singing loudly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna reach across our borders. Reach across our borders. Reach across our borders. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna end the occupation. End the occupation. End the occupation. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna stop this war together. Stop this war together. Stop this war together. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. 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 Never turning back.
My new favorite song. You're muted, Bahia.
That was great.
Thank you. That song is called Keep On Moving Forward by the band called Emma's Revolution, a duo of Pat Humphreys and Sandy O, who've been singing together for decades. And they gave us permission to play it.
Great song.
Thanks,
Great message.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you like it too. So what are y'all thinking about? Like, share your JEDI perspectives from the field.
Well, the song was like future focused, and I was talking about, how this work is to solidify a better future, an improved future. So when I think about race and gender, ability, sexual orientation, in the public school system, all of those intersections come together. And so students have so much in their backpack. In addition to their school supplies, they have all their lived experiences too, with all of their intersectionality. So my hope for the future is that in our public schools, that they are able to be themselves fully, without bias, without prejudice, without being stereotyped, without being targeted, kids can't learn that way. And so I think I don't do that much professional development for teaching staff, but when I have an opportunity to, I do make sure that I take the opportunity to provide professional development, to humanize students, to see them beyond their grades, and make their classrooms a safe space, because the famous quote is, kids don't care what you know unless they know how much you care. And so that's the future that I'm envisioning for BIPOC students who identify as gay, students who are not Christian, students. There's just so many identities in a classroom that the teacher, I also, like Kate, started my professional career as a teacher for 15 years, grades pre-K to 8th grade. So I know differentiation is hard. I know meeting the needs of a varied range, all the range in a classroom with the levels. It's huge. Teaching is not for punks. So, and the work has to be continuing to learn and grow as a professional, because you are responsible for teaching all the students, not just the ones that look like you.
That's so well put. You are responsible for teaching all of the students, not just the ones who look like you.
Davis, there's way more teachers that look like you and Kate, and not very many that look like me.
Yeah.
So it's a very real issue to keep in the forefront if we're going to continue to do the justice, equity, diversity, inclusion work of belonging for students. And I'm just focusing on students because they're vulnerable, they're dependent, they're depending on us as the adults to do our work first, so that they can be emboldened to embrace themselves and whatever their little heart is passionate about, go out and change the world. But I just, the only message I want to send is just love kids and keep them safe. And then as a school counselor, and then my personal children, like, are the kids happy? Are they healthy? Are they safe enough? Just to keep it real simple on a Maslow's level, because they also said you can't, you have to Maslow's before you bloom. So Maslow's meeting your human needs that every human being has, including being seen and being safe. And then Bloom's taxonomy is talking about the levels of comprehension, the levels of learning. And, we always want to talk about rigor. We want to talk about grades and GPAs. We want to talk about college. We want to talk about, all of the heady academic stuff. And that's all great. I'm an educator. Of course, I believe in the power of education. And we also are developing humans who are learning to be in a not so just world. And so what are us adults going to do about it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Drop the mic. Boom. You have your marching orders, people. Do your work.
Camica in charge.
Do your work.
Oh, thank you so much.
So inspiring. Yeah.
So that's what the song brought up for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think very hard to follow. Maybe I'll focus slightly differently, but I think that the efforts to make change, I'll actually build on what you're talking about, there are not a lot of students who see, not a lot of teachers, right, who can mirror, who students of what I would call the global majority, students of the global majority don't see themselves in most of the teachers we have in this district. And nor do we see a lot of advancement of people of the global majority in the higher levels of power in these systems. And so we've actually gotten a little bit better on our school board at times. And so I do think that there's a lot of work to do in recognizing why that's true and what causes that to continue to be true.
Mm.
And it would be really easy if all we had to do was recruit more folks. That's not really a viable answer when you're asking people to, for a lot of reasons, but and the pipeline is small already. However, I would say that as we broaden our thinking about what, as we broaden our thinking, I'll just say, for instance, when you look at our intern teacher preparation program, where people who are coming from being paraeducators and other positions in the district, which is a much more diverse group of people, who are then, we have developed a program, right? We've gotten a grant and where they can become certificated teachers after 2 years, and it brings an incredible depth to classrooms. It's changing classrooms. It's slow, but it's methodical, and it will continue, and it has institutional support. And so it's one little way of changing that part of the system. But it is somebody, I wanted to credit this, and I forget who said it, but someone recently said, we know it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. But then someone else said, but it's a relay. And you continue passing that baton to your team members as the change happens and as the resistance appears and you're facing it. So there's, I think, a lot of ways, but another piece that you've really been a part of, Camica, has been making a welcoming community, right? The Grown Folks BSU has been a place, or Black Staff United has been a place where staff have found company and connection, and also connection to students. So we're trying through some of our work to make welcoming places for other groups who, again, are so isolated and so far apart on campuses, and don't know that they're not alone, at least in the district as a whole. But I think you got to support the grown-ups if they're going to support the young people. And yes, the young people are the number one reason we're here.
Kate, can you speak broadly, not specifically, of course, about any people in particular, but about the other, what you just referred to as other groups that you are focusing on, listening to, striving to find ways to have their voices included?
Sure. Yeah. I think, so one example is, I think it was 5 years ago, there was kind of a critical mass of parents of children who are Native American coming to the climate office with complaints about bullying, about erroneous curriculum, about worksheets with traditional pictures of Thanksgiving, the Pilgrims, Indians, those kinds of things. And so that group was able to, for those 4 parents, I sat down with them together and asked what they wanted. And they were very clear about what they wanted and needed: a community for themselves and their families, better curriculum, better trained teachers, a couple of hard lines around not teaching the missions the way they've always been taught, not teaching Thanksgiving and Columbus the way they've always been taught, and having land acknowledgement. And so they began to meet together on their own outside as a Native Family Alliance, and together developed this list of demands, essentially, that took several years for the district to start to be able to listen to. But eventually, then there was an offer to write a proposal for the Native American education funding through the federal government. And so that now has created an ongoing funded program that supports those students, those families, and provides a place of connection. That's one example. Another is Spanish-speaking students and families. Since COVID, we've had a weekly meeting with staff all over the district who work with Spanish-speaking students and families. That has led to, that sort of converged with a language justice initiative that started also about 5 years ago, that ended up defining roles for interpreters. So we were no longer taxing our bilingual staff who, out of the goodness of their hearts, were interpreting. without backup, without protection. Kenneth, I'm looking at you being over 20 minutes. I hope we stopped at 20 minutes for you. But that we've built the standards for interpreting, so we are serving our families better, but we're also built our standards for how we treat our interpreters, and we pay them, and they're compensated, and they're trained. So that converged with our Spanish-speaking student groups so that we continue to problem solve and come together and support each other around and celebrate together, those kinds of things. That group also supports Latinos Unidos, as a sort of piece there. And there's some staff that are really invested there. So those are a couple examples. But we also, with our anti-bias education grant, continued to have, we have these constituency leadership groups. So this past year had African-American, Black heritage staff, African heritage staff, and LGBTQ plus staff. Next year, it's not yet determined, but some proposals have been around religious affiliation groups and around disability. And my mind just went blank. There's a fifth. But in any case, those are some of the groups we're looking at, trying to provide supports for folks, but not just supports, but to build the community where people can fully express what's working, what's not working, and their ideas for how to fix it. Because when you have a limited diversity in your leadership, you have a limited set of ideas. Not to mention you're, bogarting all the funds. So anyway, that's some of the groups.
Thank you. And
Camica, do you want to
I know
say
you
anything about the process or what you know of it?
No, I was just.
Oh, I just.
Go ahead, Bahia.
No, I was just going to add. I think Kate is also hoping to cultivate a group with different Arabic and different Jewish perspectives.
Thank you. Yes, although the religious would be Jewish and Muslim, and maybe Sikh or Hindu, I think also either Middle East, North African, or Arab. So working on that as well. Thank you, Bahia. Of course, the obvious answer that I left out.
No, thank you.
It's also Camica, time for us to have a community of Asian staff. So more of that. That'll be fun.
I just wanted to applaud your work for all those groups, and thank you for showing up in all those spaces and as allied to those groups and been part of some of those groups. Thank you for your work, because I've gotten to partner with you in support of African American, the constituency leadership group for Black folks. I have enjoyed, it's been a learning experience, and feel safe and welcomed and supported in the anti-bias education grant that you wrote and brought to the district. So just want to say thank you.
Mm. My honor.
Yeah. Thank you from me too. So we have 7 minutes, and I wanted to give you each time to share both. And I imagine the barriers would be different depending perhaps on skin color, experience, barriers that are common that you encounter to encourage listeners and viewers to know there's a way to persist or ask for help for brothers who've already, are already getting places where you two are getting, and also then after some of the rewards of doing JEDI work, like seriously taking it on daily.
Well, I was born in 75, so when I think about JEDI, I think about the original Star Wars movie, and I think about the lightsaber, and I think about how us in public education choose to pick up that lightsaber and choose to walk into the school buildings, with our own light, but equipped with our experiences, and then the willingness to share our experiences. But that the barriers are that not everybody cares, or not everybody wants to hear how their decisions impact, because my mentor taught me about intent versus impact, and how the decision makers at the district office are, I hope they're grateful that they have Kate as the eyes and ears on campuses to understand the impact of their decisions on actual humans and actual people. But I think at the site level, sometimes there's resistance in changing the status quo, because I think it's easy to ignore what's not impacting you personally, and so it still befuddles me how the N word is still alive and well in this age of technology and access to resources and history. But it's a favorite slur, and so I say the N word as a barrier, because it still happens in our schools, and it's still hurtful, it's still dehumanizing, and so but I think the reward is using your voice to say it's not okay, and using your voice to go to board meetings and say do something. The community is hurting, so barriers, racism, N-word, narrow perspectives, I would say, are barriers, and then the rewards are, it's another opportunity to advocate, another opportunity to share the impact.
So well put. Thank you. Do something.
And you say that without us, without the audience knowing what incredibly powerful things you've done by organizing the forum around the use of the N-word and organizing people that come to the board meeting and to speak at the board meeting, and that works. So, and that has resulted in responses from the superintendent and the Board of Education, and Camica Edwards Avorgbedor, you were at the front of that, So.
Yeah, and facilitating so many different groups all at once. On Zoom, in person, all colors, just like listening to everybody, validating everybody, just masterful facilitation.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. When you asked about barriers, Bahia, I'm going to say something that I think is both a personal barrier and it does have to do with the status quo. But I also think it's shared. I would say, especially among white women who are comfortable with the status, who have benefited from the status quo, and that is timidity. I think it might be called being silent or holding silence. I think there's some sexism it's built into our behaviors that as white women, we are quiet and we get along. We deal with our, we let our men be in charge. I mean, of course, this is all subconscious, right? But that timidity is one of our enemies. And then I think the other is shame. And to the way that shame both prevents people from acting, but also causes them to act in super weird ways that look like they're trying to help, but turn out to be really awkward and often hurtful. Well
put.
Shame is like it's like those firecrackers, right? The fireworks that go in all different directions, and it's really a bad engine, bad driver for behavior. And yet you don't want to confuse it with fragility either. Like timidity and shame maybe sometimes look like or get called fragility. There is fragility, but there also are these really bizarre motivators that just mess things up. So we got to get our heads straight. I mean, part of, I think, what's happened to white people is we've just been packed with confusions, like all this illogical, unfair, dehumanizing stuff has been stuck into our heads as if that's how things are supposed to be. And so, we're kind of messed up. But which would be funny if it weren't so hurtful, right? If it didn't cause such harm and leave such vicious, horrible things in place. So I say it sort of lightly, but I mean it very deeply, that we need to learn how to deal with our shame and our fear of speaking up and our fear of upsetting things or upsetting people.
Thanks so much. And that cognitive dissonance always comes to my mind when you're describing that. It's just like so confusing. Like your heart and your perception tells you something's happening, and then some conditioning tells you, no, don't believe what you see or hear, or that person's fully human. It really messes with you.
And I'll just add, I think. We got to go.
Just have 1 minute left.
Yeah.
So please add a closing thought, and let's
Just-
let Camica have a closing thought.
That class has a lot to do with how that shows up in us. Economic class, it comes in at us different ways.
Thank you. And Camica, your closing thought?
Yep, just continue to be the light, and share your light and share your voice, and it's contagious. So self-care is important in the work, being as a Jedi in the field with trying to level the playing field. So that's what I'll leave the audience with: self-care.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Camica. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kenneth Arnold, for signing for us. Thank you, Rebel, our engineer. Thank you to our producer, and thank you to our listeners and viewers. Be sure to tune in next Wednesday at 8 p.m. on Talk4 TV or w4cy.com. And may we all have enriching conversations in diversity next week. And thank you again to our sponsors.
Thank you.
Inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech